I'd like to call on Sprout's co-founder and Chief Product Officer, Alex Gentry, and Alex Alavisa, Sprout's Chief Technology Officer. Let's give them a warm round of applause. Hi everyone.
Hey.
So spotlight on you three.
I know. Front table. We almost don't need mics, huh?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We need mics.
All right. So just imagine you're the Philippine government and everyone's asking you questions.
Sure.
All right, so to start the panel, for Alex Gentry, what do you think of the current state of startups in the Philippines?
So, in the Philippines is actually a very challenging environment to first start a new business and second to raise funds, right? I mean, this is really because of a variety of socio-economical and political factors. And the fact is, right now, currently, we rank 124th out of 190 in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report. Now, on the funding side, on the fundraising side and the funding side, last year, the Philippine startups were able to close $310 million worth of deals. Compare that to Indonesia, we actually closed around a tenth of what Indonesia did. They were at around $3.8 million Sorry, $3.8 billion closed deals last year. Now, because of this challenge, because of this very challenging environment, we are actually now seeing a new breed of high-quality tech startups in the country. You know, these are these companies that know and understand that you really need to inspire trust in order to succeed. And when we talk about trust, this goes beyond, you know, having a very solid business model or generating revenues, real revenues. It really is about, you know, being able to do the right thing and take care of people. So at Sprout, there are some things that we're changing right now. The big part of that is that we're moving a lot of the company's administrative processes from paper to digital. We can talk a little bit more about the features that we have on Sprout HR, and Sprout Payroll, Sprout Insight, but ultimately what Sprout is going for and what Sprout wants to do is to be able to empower companies to do the same thing, that is, to do the right thing and to take care of people. Now, just some examples on doing the right thing. So Patrick mentioned this earlier. So companies are now able to have an easier time in terms of government compliance. We automate 21 different forms just in payroll so that it's easy for companies, you know, to deal with their BIR, SSS, Phil Health, and bookkeeping. Now, some examples on doing the right thing. Some examples on taking care of their employees. First, it's of course making sure that the mandated government benefits are in place. Second, very hassle-free time and attendance management. And then third, being able to have access to maybe a lot of tailor-made benefits for this market. We can talk a little bit more about that.
Oh, you have a quick question? So I think we'll have a Q&A portion later, so we can entertain everyone's questions. But I really appreciate how everyone's super enthusiastic, sir. Okay.
Thank you so later.
Right. It's a very important point that Alex put forward, and because of the difference in the tech landscape now as opposed to before, trust is so much more important. Back then you had your IBMs of the world and your Oracle, and you just trusted them because they're that big. But I think what Alex is trying to say is that right now with the new tech scene, new players, you really have to focus on customer service and building that from the get-go. So thank you very much, Alex. And now for Patrick, can you share a little bit about Sprout's history with investors and how the landscape has changed between your seed round, which happened just a few years ago, and now your Series A round, which closed back in September?
Sure. So, we started fundraising for our seed round in early 2017. And at that point, when I initially thought incorrectly to look in the West, in the US, for funding. And that's where I started. And nobody would even take a second call. So investors on the other side of the world essentially didn't know anything about the Philippines and weren't interested to kind of explore it. And so I think that's a fundamental difference from last round and this round. But I think what really struck me, I fundraised this year, so 2019, and in 2 years, the level of interest from investors overseas is incredibly different. This year we had a ton of interest coming from Silicon Valley, from New York. We had a number of term sheets from overseas, and we actually ended up with a lead from New York. And I think this is it's a major signal that the Philippines is a rising star on the investor landscape. And if you look at venture capitalists, there are signals that they look for, and one of those signals is the funds that are starting here in the Philippines. So you have JG Summits, Digital Equity Ventures, Boites Equity Ventures. You have Sea Oil, Sea Oil has Nobel Capital. These funds, these are large local funds aimed to grow the ecosystem here, and that is something that venture capitalists look for, and that's getting a lot of attention to the Philippines. So I'm really, really excited to see how that matures over the next couple of years, because even in the last two, there's been a profound change of attitude coming from investors.
And so just to synthesize, I think what Patrick's emphasizing now is timing, and how now is the time for especially Western investors to come in Southeast Asia and not just pay attention to the Indonesias of the world, Malaysia, but to pay attention to the Philippines, right? And I think Sprout's one of the companies that's leading that charge right now. For Alex Alabiso, more on the tech side, so I understand that Sprout is a close partner of Microsoft, is that right?
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the partnership, right?
Sure. So over the last year, I think as Patrick mentioned, we've gone over digital transformation. Part of that transformation was really taking our existing on-premise server architecture and partnering with Microsoft to move everything to the cloud and make sure that we do it in a secure fashion and in a fashion that's scalable. And I think part of the real benefit there is we get to work really closely with Microsoft. In fact, we meet every week almost to go through this migration. And one of the really great things about it, this cloud migration allows us to scale our systems from the smallest SMEs all the way to the largest enterprises at a price point that's attractive for everyone. I think as Patrick mentioned, we're offering free payroll for SMEs less than 50 people. But Microsoft has been incredibly helpful in making sure that we're following the best practices when it comes to development, to infrastructure, architecture, and security.
Right. So I think this is another example of signals, right? That a company is growing and ready to scale. Definitely a partnership with one of the top 5 cloud hosting companies in the world is quite comforting, right? And it just allows us to scale to the enterprise clients. I do have another question also for Patrick. So most startup companies, tech companies actually, fail the governance test. Regulation is always a problem. It's a problem for Uber. It was a problem for Airbnb. What are you guys doing right? And is your adherence to government what got you to fund it? Is that one of the reasons you got funded?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned this a little bit before, where we are an exception as a startup in that we pursued ISO 27001. We take governance incredibly seriously inside Sprout because we deal with important information for some of the largest employers in the country. So internally in Sprout, we're not a startup. We don't say that we're a startup. We don't have the startup mentality of move fast and break things. We're incredibly diligent and focused, and we really maintain an incredibly high standard of governance in Sprout.
All right, so that's very crucial that you emphasize that we're different from, or you're different from the typical startup who's just going in at it and it doesn't really care so much about regulation, primarily because of the environment that you're in, which is related to labor, which is related to the BIR, the DOLE, and so that's very comforting as well. At this juncture, are you at liberty to share who are the investors who came in? I understand some of them are investing in the Philippines for the first time, investing in Asia for the first time, so that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Point72 Ventures, they're based out of New York. It's a $500 million fund. Their parent company is a $15 billion hedge fund based out of New York. That kind of capital, can allow us by itself to go as far as we want in the Philippines. So that's a really great backer to have. One of the things that I love about Point72 is they have a number of companies in their portfolio that are analogous to Sprout. And so they understand our business model, and they provide really great strategic insights. Next Billion Ventures out of New York also joined the round. These are ex-IFC folks, and for those familiar with IFC, it's an incredibly strict organization when it comes to financial compliance and financial reporting. So it's a big vote of confidence that these type of people are investing in Sprout. Other new participants were Diamond Asia out of Singapore and Catalyst. So Catalyst is Endeavor's investment vehicle. So Alex and I are Endeavor entrepreneurs. So for those who don't know, Endeavor is a global organization seeking to grow startup ecosystems all around the world. And Alex and I really subscribe to that vision, and we want to do that here in the Philippines. So we went through the arduous process of becoming Endeavor entrepreneurs. and
Very
now,
hard process.
Yeah, it took a year, I think, and now they've actually backed Sprout. I think something really significant about this round was that all of our current investors joined the round. This is Kickstart locally, BNext and Wavemaker, both based out of Singapore. They all joined the round and actually put in more than pro rata. So they actually increased their stake in Sprout, all three of them, and that's a pretty strong signal to the strength of our business, which I'm very grateful for.
Fantastic, and congratulations, everyone. This is big. We're not talking about just the quantity invested, the amount invested. We're talking about the quality of the investors. We're talking about people with best case practices, and we're talking about people who have similar businesses in their portfolio, you mentioned. And also we're talking about recurring investment from people who did the seed round, which is very promising. Okay, fantastic. So Sprout has introduced end-to-end processing and seamless automation across HR and payroll processes, and through that the company has managed to reshape our perception of how a tech startup in the Philippines can create a strategy to attract foreign investors. So I'm sure you all are excited. I know you're excited, sir. Do you have any questions to ask? So let's proceed to our Q&A portion. Okay, if anyone has a question. So I think you got this, so I'd like to ask first.
Good morning. Good afternoon already. So I would like to ask, how is Sprout differ to other fintech company offering the same solution? Can I mention a name? Like for example, Salarium.
So I think we differ fundamentally on our larger vision for the market. So this is a big market, and so a lot of players have kind of tried to come into this space. We're very blessed that we're a category leader. We're the category leader here in the Philippines. And that is only possible because we've maintained a really tight focus on being the trustworthy enterprise player here in the Philippines. So one major difference is that, for example, with that company is that we're really focused on larger businesses here in the Philippines. Now, to do that, you have to go through an incredible amount of pain to make sure that you're doing things at a whole other level. So I think that's the biggest difference, is that we've really focused on the long game, which is putting things in place like ISO and hiring some really top talent.
Follow-up question. You mentioned here that you had a 6 million Series A funding. How big is it for salary? Because I know other fintech company, like for example Voyager, they got a 175 million investment from KKR and Tencent. So how big is 6 million for salary?
For Sprout.
For Sprout.
Are you sure you're from?
Are you sure that you're the right person?
Guard?
That's nice. Okay, so yeah, $6 million is an incredible amount of money in this market for any company. We have the benefit of being a tech startup in terms of we're a young, nimble, aggressive business versus Voyager, for example, where they have an incredible amount of bureaucracy, the inertia, let's say, to overcome. So we can do things that they can't, not for any other reason than the fact that we're a smaller, more nimble business. So it means a lot for us.
Last question.
Sprout.
Yeah, Sprout. just kidding, really. So are you also planning to get investment from your existing clients, like for example Shakey's or
BMW?
At this time, no. Simply because it's a conflict of interest if you have a client invest in your business. We don't want to have that kind of conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good afternoon, LA from Manila. Question, what was the significance of you having a startup in a Silicon Valley environment? Was it helpful, was it beneficial in terms of IT Practices Act? And also, your HR solutions, are you fully cloud-based? Are you premise-based? Are you hybrid?
Okay. Actually, Alex, you...
So I guess to answer your question specifically around cloud solution, we went from being on-premise to 100% cloud-based. And with that comes some of the challenges of scalability, availability, and also security. And that's why we've worked pretty closely with Microsoft over the last year to make sure that all of those processes were taken.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean stopping you to work with Amazon, Google, and all the other web solutions providers.
No, not at all. In fact, no one who uses Sprout HR or payroll software will ever know that it's hosted via Microsoft. I mean, it could be via AWS or Google. We're really cloud agnostic, but we do run scalable and available systems on Microsoft.
So I would assure that your product's already tested in terms of security, reliability, and also backup services?
Sure. So, I mean, part of the ISO 27001, part of that process, the certification process, was we had auditors come in. We spent months preparing for this audit, but we had people in our offices going, checking our processes. It's not just about, do do you have the processes and procedures, but do you actually document that you're following them? So that, on top of our help with, from Microsoft, to ensure that our systems were scalable, available, and secure, we're also doing vulnerability and penetration testing through a third-party service provided by PricewaterhouseCoopers. We do that every 6 months on a regular basis, just to make sure. So, and our audits happen once a year as well for ISO 27001.
So on your backend, are you fully running on Microsoft, or are you using other technologies like blockchain? And are you also Data Privacy Act aware already?
Of course, yeah. So we're registered with the NPC. We do have our DPOs.
Oh, nice.
And then on top of that, to answer your previous question, we're 100% Microsoft software at this point.
Okay, hi, my name is Ron. My question is about the valuation of the 2 rounds that you did. So basically, on the first round, how much was left in terms of ownership? And on the second round, how much is still left under ownership?
And then he'll do the math.
And in terms of how much was the final valuation? Or for
Sure, those are great questions. Alex and I are to this day, still the very significant majority owners of Sprout. We were able to grow
51%.
the value for our shareholders more than threefold in the last year between rounds. So I think we are committed to being a high growth company, but we're very fortunate to have investors that understand the need to really be disciplined about how we grow. So I think that's really the way that we steer it with our investors. We're not a grow at all costs business, and I think you can't be as a startup in the Philippines. There are just the trust barriers are too significant here to do the kind of Silicon Valley style fake it till you make it approach to things.
So I would assume that you guys are still in the controlling interest of the company.
51%.
Still, yeah.
51%.
The legally allowed 51%. Is that fair to quote?
Maybe 52 or higher.
Alex and I have control of the business, and so we are definitely the ones guiding things in terms of the future of Sprout. Absolutely.
After you, who's the next and the third largest shareholders, if you are allowed to mention that?
You want to buy stocks?
I don't want to.
We're gonna pool our money. We're gonna buy stocks.
Very good question. Again, thank you. I think our shareholders may want to say in that, so I think I'll refrain from getting into that.
Are there also people from your, from the company that invested in Sprout, are there also people sitting as a board member or any other key positions? Because in other startup company, they do have.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in tech, it's normal or expected that each round, you take on one board member from the round.
Right.
So it's normal to take on one board member per round essentially.
So you have 2 already. Right?
That would be something you would imply. That could be implied.
It's about to become 3.
Good afternoon, I'm Victor from GMA. Congratulations on your funding.
Thanks.
I'd just like to get more information on it. If I understand correctly, it closed in September. I also just wanted to get more information on the Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, September 26th, the round closed. And so this is actually a really interesting point, because a typical tech startup will be quite shallow and go very broad. Meaning to say, you have a light solution, and then you go regional or global. In contrast to that, Sprout is 100% focused on the Philippines. This is a big market. As I mentioned, we're the category leader, and we have a big vision. So again, we're incredibly lucky that we have investors that get that, that understand that we have a lot to do here. So we're focusing on this market. What that means for our clients, for businesses here in the Philippines, is if you look at Sprout, we are HR and payroll, and that's where we start. But the kind of data that we have can drive all kinds of value-added services to improve the lives of Filipinos in those businesses that use Sprout. So we're super excited for that journey.
There was my question about Silicon Valley. What's the...
Sorry. So it's interesting, there's an amazing amount of stuff that does translate across markets that you don't think would. For example, question of cloud versus on-premise. That's something that you learn about in Silicon Valley because it's still a question there in the US, actually. And there's some things that just don't translate across. For example, in Silicon Valley, you would say, all right, launch a website, allow people to sign up, have a self-onboarding tool, it's a free software, and eventually they start paying for it. That does not happen in Asia. I think one of the earliest learnings of Alex and I is that this market doesn't operate that way. Developing countries don't operate that way. They need FaceTime, clients need FaceTime, and your whole approach needs to be different when it comes to client management. Yeah.
I think to add to that, some of the things that we actually really learned from there and decided to take back here. First is the concept of customer success. So instead of just like basic account management, it's really partnering with your clients and doing quarterly business reviews with them to see if they're reaching their goal with the partnership that you have with them. So yeah, that's something. Another thing is, I had one, but I now have to go back. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest ones. Oh, the second one is being very metrics driven. So we really look at our unit economics. We study it and we know it and we track it like crazy. That was ingrained into us when we were in Accelerate for 4 months.
I could add something else actually. Something that comes from Silicon Valley that I still see as a need here, I think, is a really tight pitch. Really good quality pitching skills. So actually Alex was formerly with Kickstart. He was Kickstart's technical reviewer and actually reviewed Sprout during our seed round long before he was involved in the company. And he could tell you some things that he could talk to you about pitching. And so that's something that we brought here was that, and I think that's still something that's needed here in this market.
I have one left. Also, I think the idea of going deep and narrow instead of broad and wide. And so that was very hard for us because there are so many problems around HR and payroll that you want to solve. And you see our competitors maybe going in all those different directions. But for us, we were trained to go deep and narrow, and for a long time we were really just trying to address this time and attendance and payroll issue. And for how many years we really had our heads buried and really trying to address this issue. So Amar is saying, you guys have been so quiet, we don't see you guys. Well, we're trying to address this problem, and that's what we've been doing for the last how many years. But I think that at the end of the day, the focus in those things and the things that we want to do well and we want to address have really paid off.
Hi. Hi, I'm Lisbeth from Manila Times. I'd just like to ask what's your current client base and how do you plan to grow this with the new funding?
Sure. So we have around 300 clients today in the enterprise space, paying clients. We have several hundred SMEs that are on the free plan, but we're quite strong in mid-market enterprise. If you look across our client base, we have around 75,000 users in the system. But this is a drop in the bucket in this market. We aim to have 1 million employees in our software by the end of 2023. And like I said, it's a big market. We're really excited to expand here.
Which sectors are you focusing on?
So the verticals that kind of need Sprout, need this type of software the most, it really spans the entire market. But some verticals like business process outsourcing, food and beverage, hospitality, manufacturing, government. I mean, these are sectors that really struggle with problems in this space. So we're addressing these.
You mentioned that your strategy is better to go deep and narrow rather than broad and wide. Would you say that this kind of strategy is better for profit for startups?
I think for a startup to initially succeed, the focus needs to be deep. After proving that model and maybe addressing the problem that you set out to address, then more room to go and attack all the other areas. But if you ask me, point blank, for a startup to succeed, initially deep and narrow is the way.
Yeah, just a follow-up on you mentioned during our interview 3 years ago that you had this hashtag paperless 2020. Is that still the goal, and do you still see yourself reaching that goal?
So when we set up to do this, that has been like we said, okay, maybe that's something that we can really anchor ourselves to. When you look at what Sprout is doing, it is really taking processes from paper to digital. And there are a lot of programs outside of Sprout, even government, that are all kind of gearing towards this. So, yeah. So one step at a time, one company at a time.
I
just want to confirm again, your CSP is Azure, right? Microsoft Azure. Is it a public or private environment or the hybrid one?
It's 100% private.
So, don't you think you need the flexibility gained from public cloud access?
What can you?
For example, there are many companies right now using the hybrid cloud solution because it's flexible for the public part and it's also the control for the private one. So, aren't you going to use the public cloud, or will it be purely private all the way?
Right. So I think from a security standpoint, it's probably safer to stay private. I think obviously with the recent changes in law, not just here in the Philippines with the DPA, but also with GDPR, I think the world is moving towards a more secure and private, data privacy aware sort of environment. So I think it's always better to be safer than sorry, right? So I think there's absolutely no reason for anyone outside of your company to ever have access to your systems, right? So that's why we decided to go private.
So since your clients will be shifting from their own software as a CapEx to an OpEx managed service, how significant will be the reduction in their TCO, for example, in a 5-year span?
So we get this a lot. We have cost-benefit analysis that we give our clients. And it goes beyond just reducing TCO. It's really about clients finding a partner that can help them future-proof their business. And that's exactly what Sprout does. So we are part of a new generation of tech companies that clients will be leveraging to take advantage of technology in ways that companies never did before. And so I think that's a fundamental difference between like tech today and tech 10 or 20 years ago that will reverberate into the future for sure.
You were mentioning that it's free for 15?
1 to 50.
0 to 50.
0 to
50.
1 to 50.
1 to
yeah.
50.
50. So on the 51st you will be charging.
Correct.
How much would it be per employee?
So it really varies on which modules a company wants to avail, but minimum would be 5,000 pesos per month at that point.
For a 51?
For a 51-person company.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
Not bad.
so it's very affordable. Yeah, 100 pesos per head at that point.
Did you ever have a client that went to cloud with you and suddenly they said, no, we're going back to our traditional?
No, we haven't. You can't, like the benefits from moving to cloud are
Just a question, what if a client does, what happens to their data? Do you purge it? Do you send it back to them? Because under Data Privacy Act, you know.
Correct.
In terms of recruitment, do you offer the
Yeah, so it's a really great question. I mean, because I'm always thinking about this myself, right? What happens, anytime I sign up for a new website or, whatever, where is that data going and how long is it going to be there? So we do have data retention policies that are in line.
How long?
Yeah, so it depends. So again, I think from a data privacy perspective, we're a processor. So it's really up to the client on how long they want their data with us. But we do have our own data retention policy, and we do destroy data if requested by our customers.
Just going back to the proceeds, can you be more specific as to how you plan to utilize that? Will that be more for OPEX and expansion, maybe? Get more details.
For sure. So it will be going towards OPEX and expansion. We are expanding through the provinces, whereas previously we've been focused on Metro Manila. We're now spreading our range a lot more nationwide. So one of the big directions is to expand nationally. The other is, again, building up products and services that are needed specifically here in the Philippines. For example, salary lending is something that is a problem for a lot of companies due to a lot of predatory lenders here in the market. And Sprout aims to disrupt that, absolutely.
Also, you mentioned that you target 1 million employees by 2023. Just wanted to get more info. Where are we now, just for comparison?
So we have around 75,000 employees in the system, on the paid system, paying rather. And if you look at the market, there's 26.8 million employed formally employed Filipinos here in the Philippines. So it's a big market to attack.
Lastly, your expansion outside the Manila side. Can you elaborate which areas you plan to?
So Sprout already has a small presence in Cebu. We're expanding into Davao, Clark. Those are the next steps. So those 3 areas are next, and then beyond. So Davao and Davao and Clark early next year. We already have an office in Cebu, so we're expanding there.
So aside from all those companies are regional and global, so does it mean that the Philippine market is capturing the global market already? Is that how it is right now?
So, good question.
Because the only local here is Shakey's and my phone. That's like local companies.
Okay, good question. So in that banner, we have a lot of international companies, but we serve a lot of local companies. For example, Army Navy, Epicurean, which is Kenny Rogers, and they hold the franchise for those. Shakey's, Sunny's, it's a local brand of ours. So, and more to the point, these international companies have offices here in the Philippines, and for those offices, we are their chosen provider.
But how about the other branches?
So outside of the Philippines, no. So we focus on the Philippine market. So we address the pain points here in the Philippines. Something that was a fundamental learning for me was that although all of these large internationals use SAP, Workday, or Oracle, those solutions are not doing the things that Sprout does to their clients.
But if
specifically, government compliance here in the Philippines, automating those 32 pay rates that are very unique to this country. And these companies have incredibly rigorous requirements. Many of them have done penetration tests on Sprout, or they have that as a requirement before signing a contract with us. So one of the, even before we went through ISO, we were really doing the things that we needed for that kind of certification, just because we have clients who really demand that of us.
But if you're cloud certified already, what's stopping you to go global?
Pardon?
If you're cloud certified already, what's stopping you to go global?
To go global. So, like as Alex mentioned,
Security.
So as Alex mentioned, you have to stay narrow indeed. If we're going global, you start running into HR policies, payroll policies of other markets, and
regulations.
Yeah, regulations. I mean, what makes us so strong is that we are trustworthy, enterprise-level software, localized to the needs of the Philippines.
So you love the Philippine market.
We love it. Yeah, that's right. We're here to stay, for sure.
Okay.
I understand this is the second round of financing. So can we expect another round sometime in the next few years, sir? And how much investment will you be needing to raise?
That's a really good question. We are absolutely putting this money to work here in the Philippines, and we're in a place where future fundraising will be optional, and I'm excited to see what happens. But right now we're really focused on executing what we need to do for the Series A.